Good morning and welcome to Rising. Happy New Year. Hope you enjoyed our new set design and our new music, which I'd love to talk about more, but unfortunately we have to begin the day with a rather somber story. Good morning, Niall.
Morning, Robbie. Yeah, absolutely. Happy New Year to you too, but a not very happy news agenda today. So start us off. What is on your radar?
Well, we begin the year, unfortunately, on a very grim note with twin acts of violence, one clearly terrorism, the other possibly terrorism, occurring in New Orleans and in Las Vegas. First, let's look at New Orleans, where at least 15 people are dead following a despicable act of mass murder. A man identified as 42-year-old Shamsuddin Bahar Jabbar allegedly drove a rented vehicle down Bourbon Street, popular tourist destination in the French Quarter of the city, deliberately striking numerous people around 3:15 a.m. Bourbon Street is typically closed to vehicles. It's an area where pedestrians can walk in the street itself, visiting shops and restaurants on foot. But Jabbar drove around a police barricade in order to carry out his attack. He had weapons, possibly explosives, and did engage police in a brief exchange of gunfire before they shot him dead. Now, Bourbon Street typically has additional security measures in place, but local law enforcement said those extra barricades were being repaired at the time. Now, there will certainly be time later to scrutinize whether an oversight by authorities contributed to the deadliness of this attack, though we shouldn't jump to conclusions on that front. For now, however, it's fair to say that the three officers who acted quickly to neutralize the killer are heroes, brought this rampage to an end, and undoubtedly saved additional lives. Now, the suspect, Jabbar, is dead, but the FBI believes he may not have been working alone. That's not confirmed yet. Additional suspects could still be at large. It's cause for serious concern as New Orleans will be hosting the Sugar Bowl later today. The game was initially delayed for 24 hours due to the attack. Jabbar had in his possession the flag of ISIS, the Islamic terrorist group, that has called on its supporters to commit acts of violence against Americans. President Joe Biden has said there's no question that he was inspired by the Islamic State. Let's watch the president's remarks.
The FBI for working non-stop to investigate this heinous act. The FBI is leading the investigation to determine what happened, why it happened, whether there was any continuing threat to public safety. Here's what we know so far. The FBI has reported to me the killer was an American citizen, born in Texas. He served in the United States Army on active duty for many years. He also served in the Army Reserve until a few years ago. The FBI also reported to me that mere hours before the attack, he posted videos on social media indicating that he was inspired by ISIS, expressing a desire to kill, The ISIS flag was found in his vehicle, which he rented to conduct this attack. Possible explosives were found in the vehicle as well, and more explosives were found nearby.
As Biden said, Jabbar is indeed an American citizen who served in the military and lived in Texas. According to additional media reports, he had converted to Islam in recent years. He's been married and divorced twice. The husband of his ex-wife told reporters Jabbar had recently become erratic and the couple had stopped permitting him to see his two teenage daughters. The New York Times claims that he had recently moved into a heavily Muslim neighborhood in Houston, and he may have also been in financial trouble. CNN has reported that he made videos in which he discussed plans to murder his entire family, but then he had dreamt he was instructed to join ISIS instead. The vehicle he used to carry out the attack was rented from an online car rental service called Turo. That detail is actually quite important for reasons we'll explain in a moment. Now we turn to a separate incident, which was thankfully much less deadly but still quite shocking. A Tesla Cybertruck exploded outside the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas around 7 a.m. yesterday. The only person killed was the driver, though several other people suffered minor injuries. Elon Musk, owner of Tesla, confirmed on X that the explosion was caused not by the vehicle itself malfunctioning, but because of a large firework or explosive device inside the truck. Get this, the truck was also rented using Turo, just like the vehicle used in the New Orleans attack. That could be a coincidence. It's a popular rental app, but right now that strikes some people as implausible. The American people are undoubtedly feeling a great deal of fear right now. Were these attacks linked, and are additional perpetrators, additional terrorists, still at large? Now is not the time for wild speculation. It's the time for top national law enforcement agencies, the FBI foremost among them, to get to work neutralize any threat that remains. The federal government is, of course, in a transitional phase right now, with President-elect Donald Trump's choices for key positions, Kash Patel at FBI, Pete Hegseth at Defense, Kristi Noem at Homeland Security, awaiting confirmation. Trump campaign advisor Alex Brusiewicz writes on X that there's absolutely no time for political games or delays. Indeed, it is time to get to work. So we have these two incidents, the horrifying scene in New Orleans on Bourbon Street, a place I've visited in the past, a really fun, exciting tourist destination, heart of the city, playing host to this just awful, appalling crime, 15 people dead. And then we don't know at this time whether it is connected to the Las Vegas truck explosion. They did not find ISIS paraphernalia there so far, so we don't know, but the rental car app, now that could be a coincidence. If this is an app that lets you, instead of going through Hertz or Enterprise or a car rental service, this lets people like Uber DIY their own car rent. They can rent out their own personal vehicle to people. So if you're using that, this is a popular service to do that. So it could be a coincidence, it's bad PR for the company, or they could be linked. I think we're just still waiting to see.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is, obviously, it's a tragic event, well, two tragic events. We don't know about the linkage, if there is any. 15 people dead, at least in New Orleans. Sadly, I have seen reports that death toll could rise. Obviously, a horrific event. There has been a history over more than 10 years now of these mass killings that have some Islamist component. Fort Hood back in 2009, there was the San Bernardino case, you may remember,
yes,
where a husband and wife killed 14 people, and then the Pulse nightclub shooting where the killer seemed
yes,
to have a whole confluence of influences, but one of them was that he thought that the Western lifestyle was filthy and expressed some fondness for ISIS. So that is all very bleak, very depressing stuff. You're right about obviously the commonality of the use of the app is something that arouses suspicion but isn't dispositive of anything. Now, you quoted the Trump spokesperson talking about political games. I do think we have to say that Trump himself on Truth Social talked about the fact, or tried to cast this as a byproduct of lax border security or of migration, which it isn't. He was complaining that, and this is the quote, "When I said that the criminals coming in are far worse than the criminals we have in our own country, that statement was constantly refuted by Democrats and the fake news media, but it turned out to be true." It didn't turn out to be true in this case. This man was born and raised in Beaumont, Texas, had served in the US Army, had always been, as far as we know, a US citizen. So that attempt to shoehorn this very tragic case into that framework just isn't factual.
Sure, he's an American citizen. This is not a case of importing in some terrorist person. Now, as we probe his ideology and his motivations, I think it's fair to say that the success, unfortunately, the dark success ISIS has had in inspiring people, like you noted, to commit, who are Americans, but to subscribe to that ideology and commit violence here is something I think we should take seriously and discuss strategies to combat. The ideology being something that is seeping into the country. But you're right to note, and Trump should not have said, that it was the person himself. Now, we don't know if his military experience could have played into this. Clearly mental disturbance on some level, given the erratic behavior, the, again, desire to kill the divorced ex-wife, and then he has a dream that he should join ISIS instead. So there will be a mental illness component and a terrorism component that needs to be investigated further. I've also seen some harping on the barricades not being present on Bourbon Street, which definitely look into whether that was a mistake that was made. However, if somebody's determined to drive over a bunch of people in a car, I mean, we can't barricade their streets are literally for cars, not Bourbon Street, but
right. No, exactly.
He could have done this in any other way, so I'm hesitant to jump into the how dare they not have the barricades up kind of argument.
No, absolutely. I mean, if there were egregious failures in this case, then certainly those are worth probing. But like you, a free society is by its nature a vulnerable society to some degree. In order to create a completely, as it were, terrorism-proof society, you would have to sacrifice freedoms that the vast majority of us do not want to sacrifice.
Which is exactly what they want.
Right.
Islamic extremists, ISIS, wants us to overreact. Al-Qaeda wanted this, Osama bin Laden wanted this, us to overreact. And I mean, the contempt they have for the relative freedom we live in, which is not the only motivator of their attacks. They're also upset about the U.S. interventions into Middle Eastern countries, but to overreact and to create a police state would be a success for the terrorists. We cannot let them win, and we cannot do that. So I very much agree about being cautious and not unduly threatening civil liberties as we explore ways to keep us all safer in the new year.
Which I think is also why there's merits in going ahead with the Sugar Bowl, albeit 24 hours later than it was scheduled to be.
Yes, indeed. More Rising coming up next. Please stay with us.